Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Dark Verse. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto trained under Itachi and fell in love with Sakura, part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Small boy dashed through the deserted streets, his breathing labored. Running from some unknown peril, tears were streaming down his cheeks, blending with the mud that was caked to his face. Along with this, blood from various cuts and gashes mixed with the substance, creating a disgusting combination. It dripped from his chin, leaving an almost unnoticeable trail behind. Almost. He ducked into a narrow alleyway, skidding to a stop behind a large stack of stock crates. He fell to his knees and hugged them close, praying that they wouldn't find him here. He waited silently in the quiet, desperately trying to control his ragged breathing before they neared his hidden location. A few moments later, his suspicions were proved. Footsteps thundered past the opening to the alley, the flickering light from the torches illuminating faintly against the dark. "Where is he, the little freak?" A gruff voice spat, angry that his target was missing. "The trail ends here," another voice relayed. The child flinched. He had left behind evidence. Evidence that could lead them to where he was now. Maybe he ran down here. "You know, hid behind one of the trash cans," an unknown figure suggested, stepping into the dark doorway. The boy tensed, preparing to make another dash. "Hold on, I think I see him," a woman's voice called, sounding far off. "Come on everyone," the apparent leader shouted. "Death to the demon," a man yelled, gaining a chorus of war cries and agreements in response. Soon, the noise faded into night, leaving the child alone to wallow in his misery. "They do not understand your worth," a voice murmured, sounding from all directions. The boy's head snapped up and glanced wildly around the area, searching for the voice's owner, and possibly, his next attacker. "They only fear what you cannot and could not control," the figure said again, seeming closer now. The child whimpered, squeezing his body into the smallest target he could make it, and braced for the blow. "Fear not, I do not seek to harm you," the man's voice called. Out of the shadows, a teenage boy appeared, his shoulder-length raven hair tied into a small ponytail. He had droplets of blood covering the Anbu uniform he was currently wearing, and the Leaf Shinobi handband had a long scratch going through the symbol. "Who or why you?" the fair-haired boy stuttered in question, his eyes wide, his defensive position never failing. The teen smiled softly. "My name is Itachi Uchiha. I have been watching you for some time now and I can defiantly say you have some promise," he explained. "You already show signs of great talent, and you will become something of greatness, with proper training," Itachi continued. The boy only looked on in cautious confusion, unsure of where the seeming friendly teen was getting at. "Let me ask you, do you hate the way these blind villagers have treated you?" the Uchiha prodigy asked. Not even having to think about his response, the child nodded, slowly uncurling himself from his protective stance. "That's why I want to be Hokage," he answered simply and quietly. Itachi nodded understandingly. "Oh, but to change these villagers' opinions, you will have to become something even more. A legend," Itachi explained. "A legend," the boy repeated, mulling this over in his mind. "If you come with me, I will train you all I can. I will make you the greatest ninja there ever lived, greater than all the Hokages combined. You will be the best, the legend in children's bedtime stories. All you have to do is leave this village, with me," Itachi offered. The boy bowed his head in awe, the spiky blonde strands falling over his eyes. Could he really leave the village hidden in the leaves? With someone he'd meet only a few moments ago? Could he really trust this, Itachi? Of course he wanted to become great, it was his lifelong dream. He'd do anything for that ambition to come true. Even if that meant dying in the process. He glanced up at the Uchiha, his gaze hard and strong, one of a great ninja in the making. I will follow you anywhere, if that means my dream will be realized. The boy answered in a firm voice, standing from his corner, his sapphire eyes glinting boldly. Itachi smirked. Then come with me, Naruto Uzumaki. Today, we begin. Today, the legend is born. And on that night of October 10th, an Anbu captain and a small child left the village, unnoticed, into the darkness of the outside world. Are you glad to be coming back? A raven-haired man asked, his face shadowed by the casa on top of his head. The boy next to him smirked, his blonde hair blowing in the slight breeze. Ecstatic. He replied, the sarcasm in his tone deep. Naruto had certainly changed in the 8 years he had been on the road. He sported black capris, going to just below his knee line. He was wearing a dark orange shirt underneath a black jacket, which was halfway unzipped. He was also wearing a necklace that consisted of 3 red tomes, almost exactly like the Sharingan. He had grown much, making 5 feet even. His blonde hair had only been cut a few times during the last couple of years, the spiky bits ending right above his eyebrows. Strapped firmly to his back was a single sword, sheathed in a case of firm leather. Naruto, now that I have trained you, and giving you the knowledge and skills to become the greatest legend of all, there is something I want you to give me in return, Itachi said, glancing at his pupil beside him. Naruto nodded. Anything for you, Master Itachi. He answered simply, his voice soft. Itachi smirked. The boy would do anything if it meant pleasing him. It was a very good thing. Okay, me intentions are easy, I wish to destroy Konoha. And I need you to do it, from the inside, Itachi explained, measuring the boy's response intensely. Naruto just shrugged. No problem. Any details? He asked. Itachi nodded. That was fairly easy. I have a few alliances I still need to work out. I'll let you know soon. Just keep your radio with you at all times, the Uchiha replied. Naruto nodded again in understanding, the gates coming up on them fast. They cast long shadows along the ground, signifying that it was close to noon now. Now, this is where I take my leave. I am a disbanded ninja, while you were only presumed dead. You will be undercover as a genin here, so you will be put in their class. And whatever you do, don't show them everything you know, Itachi instructed, turning to leave. Naruto bowed, his eyes closed respectfully. Yes, master. He replied, watching as his friend and former sensei vanished into the black. Now one of the Leaf Village's weak, pathetic ninja would be his teacher. He rolled his eyes. Pathetic. He whipped around on his heel, the movement like a fluid dance as he was so good on his feet now. He strode confidently through the gates, right past the guard booth, not even bothering to stop. Excuse me, I need to see your pass. One of the guards, Genma, called after him. The blonde turned slightly, just enough for the guard to see his face, and continued to walk away. Immediately, the Chunin was silent, his jaw dropped. What is it, Genma? Katetsu wondering, curious as to why the one intruder caused the man to stiffen into stone. That's Naruto Uzumaki. I'd recognize those whisker-like scars anywhere, Genma stuttered, his face white. Katetsu's eyes widened. Didn't he die 8 years ago? The bandaged shinobi questioned, staring after the boys retreating back. Genma shook his head in denial. No, he disappeared. But after almost a year of no response, Hokage-sama closed the case and labeled him deceased, reluctantly of course. You know he always had a heart for that boy, although no one could ever figure out why, the Senbon chewing man replied. So, he's back, Katetsu yelled, standing up in utter surprise. We need to contact the Hokage, he added, scanning the area for a nearby patrol. Calm down, Katetsu. I'm sure the boy is on his way there now. I mean, he's going to want to jump right into the academy, although he will be so far behind. I'm not sure if he'll even be able to pass with this year's class, Genma said, catching his partner by the arm. The other Chunin sighed. Yeah, you're right. He's never going to pass that exam, not without Iruka's training. And with only one day to go, the poor boy's got no hope, Kotetsu answered, chuckling a bit. Little did they know, one of Konoha's most dangerous villains was hiding in a tree overlooking the guard station, smirking softly. Little do you know, is that Naruto canon will exceed you all. And then, your precious village will fall. The old man Hokage was bent over his slowly depleting pile of papers. He stamped his approval on one and then turned to the next, sighing heavily. I'm getting too old for this. I think my back will forever be in this scrunched over position after the day I retire. A steady knocking interrupted his thoughts, snapping him back into reality. Come in, he commanded, his voice a little raspy from disuse. He glanced up, looking to see the ninja that needed his assistance. And who he saw standing there made him almost jump out of his chair in surprise, but he was positive his bones wouldn't move that fast. The little blonde Jinchuriki that disappeared so long ago, the boy he thought he had lost. The Yondaime's last and final wish. Although the small child he remembered had changed considerably. Naruto, what a surprise, the Hokage said, smiling widely, the wrinkles around his eyes crinkling into the expression. The boy didn't respond to the gesture at all, he only stood in the doorway, his face blank. I've come to you on a request, he stated simply, walking up to the chair in the center of the room, silently leaning back. Needless to say, the Sandaime was shocked of the boy's cold nature. He had always been a smiling, warm-hearted kid in the past. But he had been gone for almost a decade, many things had changed. Not exactly good changes though. Yes, Naruto, what is it? He replied, placing his elbows on the wooden desk and resting his chin on his hands. I want to enroll in the academy, to become a registered genin of the Konoha Shinobi. The cerulean-eyed affirmed, his stature stiff and robotic, as if he had been trained to remaining absolutely still. 8 years ago, the child had always had a problem keeping motionless. He'd fidget or shift in his seat almost constantly, his eyes darting around the room, as if looking for a way out. The Hokage shook himself out of his thoughts. He needed to stop thinking so much about the past. This was now, and this Naruto was real. Well, Naruto, I think that's a wonderful idea, but you are much too old to be placed in the beginning classes. I mean, there. I want to be put into the graduating class of this year, Naruto added, gaining a shocked response from the old man, twice in one visit now. Naruto. That's impossible. I mean, I know you must have had some training while you were gone, but you would be way too behind to just jump into the class now. The graduation exams are tomorrow. There's absolutely no way you'd make it, not with the disadvantage you're at. He sputtered, utterly surprised that he'd want to skip so far ahead. At least that trait had remained with him after all this time. Naruto's frown deepened. I can assure you, my skills are more than enough to pass your tests, Naruto declared, crossing his arms tightly across his chest. The third Hokage clenched his jaw, deep in thought. After a few moments of quiet, he dug to the bottom of the filed paper pile and produced a rather large file. This is a file that contains information on all of the academy students that will be participating in the tests tomorrow. There is only one spot left in this class, and even though I believe that you will be at a very high drawback, I will send you to Iruka. With you, you will bring a message from me, saying that I approve of your acceptance and full permission to participate in the graduation exams tomorrow. Lucky for you it's review day, so at least you'll have 24 hours to cram. The Sandaime said, a small smile stretching across his face, withered with age. The blonde before him nodded, standing up in a fluid lime motion. The Hokage swiftly wrote the note to the scarred Chunin and handed it to the newest addition to the graduating class. And with that, Naruto, the returned Jinchuriki, vanished into thin air. Astonish crossed the old man's face quickly, but it disappeared in an instant, replaced by a soft smile. Ah, Naruto. It will be interesting to see what you have learned from this winning teacher of yours. And that is how the first great ninja war came and ended. Now, this was beginning of the year material, so if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to ask, a Chunin said to his class, ending just as the bell for lunch rang. He had a scar running across the bridge of his nose, probably from a battle long ago. His class of 19 students fought and quarreled, trying to be the first out the door. He sighed. Even 6 years later, they still acted like children. He always loved these 30 minutes of quiet. It gave him some time to collect his being and focus on the next lesson, and ultimately, keeping his pupils' attention. This was a unique bunch, these kids, but definitely had its run of troublemakers. They would all be great ninja if they just took it seriously once in a while. The sliding door silently opened, drawing the Chunin's attention from his thoughts. A blond boy, looking to be around 12 or 13, walked calmly into the room, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. Iruka gave him a once-over, noting on some of his unusual characteristics. Like the fact that he had whisker-like marks scored across both cheeks. He could only remember one person that had those kind of scars, and the boy had disappeared 8 years ago. Could it be? The boy slid a piece of paper across the desk to the gawking teacher, scanning the room in boredom, taking in his surroundings. Quickly examining the message, Iruka's eyes widened. Iruka, the boy you see before you now is none other than the missing child from long ago, Naruto Uzumaki. He came to my office only minutes ago, requesting that he be put into this year's graduating class. I seriously doubt that the boy will be able to pass the exams, due to the fact that he only has 1 day to learn all the material he needs to know, but I have decided to give him a fair shot. I can plainly see that the child has received some training from someone, I do not know at this time who, but I'm not sure if it would be enough. I guess we'll find out tomorrow. The Sandame. To say Iruka was shocked was an understatement. He was completely flabbergasted. Here was the Yondaime's final wish, returned from the dead, wanting to jump right into the village's ninja forces. Taking a better look this time, the Chunin could see that he had changed very much from time he had seen him last. Well then Naruto, there's only about a few more minutes of lunch break, so you can take a seat anywhere you like, Iruka said. The blonde nodded in response, sliding quietly into a seat in the front row. Resting the back on the desk behind him and placing his feet on his desk, he began to rock back and forth in a slow motion, calmly awaiting his class to return. Hey Sasuke-kun, you're going to sit by me this time, right? A pink-haired girl cooed, running up to a dark-haired boy's side, bouncing up and down. He glanced over at her and rolled his eyes. Couldn't these girls ever give him a break? No, he stated darkly, picking up his pace, trying to get away from the nuisance at his side. The girl wilted, struck out again. But just as it looked like he was going to get away, his other number 1 fan tackled him out of nowhere. Sasuke-kun, a long-haired blonde yelled, enveloping him in a lung-crushing hug from behind. The poor teen struggled to free himself, desperately wanting to avoid the explosion that was inevitably going to follow. What are you doing to my Sasuke-kun, Ino pig? The pink-haired girl spat, marching up to the two. What did you mean you're Sasuke-kun? He's mine, forehead. She yelled in return, dropping from the raven-haired boy's back to confront her rival. He's in love with me, the cherry blossom cried. You're just delusional, Sakura. He's in love with me and everyone knows it, Ino screeched. Both girls whipped around, ready for a race to attack the yummy Uchiha, but disappointingly to them, they could see his retreating back many yards away. With one final glare, the two broke out into a dash, competing to see who would get to the prize first. A cluster of students squeezed their way through the door, all trying to get in at the same time. Immediately, they all noticed the blonde boy waiting patiently in the first row, his hands behind his head and his eyes closed. A teen with a dog on top of his head quietly danced over to where the boy was resting and motioned for everyone to be quiet. He leaned down, reaching out to tip the chair back and send its passenger sprawling onto the ground. Don't even think about it, Naruto growled, causing the kid to scramble backwards in surprise. I thought you were asleep, he exclaimed. Naruto smirked slightly. Not everything is always as it seems, he answered, watching uninterestedly as the rest of the students filed in, taking their seats and waiting for Iruka to return. A dark-haired boy tumbled into the room, followed by a pink-haired girl and a blonde one, all of them landing in a tumbled heap on the floor, with Sasuke on the bottom. Sasuke, tell her, the blonde one yelled, her bangs spread messily across his forehead due to the tussle. Her light blue eyes were alight with determination and fury, her long blonde hair pulled into a high ponytail, and ending right above the small of her back. No, you tell her, the other one screamed, glaring at the girl on top of her. Her light pink hair flowed to her shoulder blades, and her eyes were a subtle green, shining with the same expression as the blondie. The poor boy pinned underneath them had dark charcoal eyes, complemented by raven black hair. Naruto's eyes narrowed. So, this is Itachi's little brother. Doesn't look like much. Get the hell away from me, Sasuke grunted, pulling himself out from underneath the pile of fangirls. Naruto scoffed. Pathetic, he muttered, rolling his eyes at the scene that was taking place. Sasuke whipped around, his eyes meeting Naruto's, one filled with disbelief and the other simply monotony. What did you just say? Sasuke asked, not sure if he had heard him right. He did not just call Sasuke Uchiha weak. I said you're pathetic, feeble, weak, Naruto repeated, gaining small gasps from around the room. He could feel a few of the girls glaring at him, but what did he care? Not like their opinions mattered. I'd be careful, newcomer. I can kick you from here to Suna, Sasuke growled. Explain why you think I actually care, Naruto replied, completely bored with the whole situation. I'm warning you now, I am at the top of the class, I could beat you down into the ground, the raven-haired teen seethed. Usually he didn't care what others said, but this kid, he acted like he knew he could beat him. He had called him weak. And that infuriated Sasuke to no end. Whatever, Naruto mocked, closing his eyes again. Sasuke had had enough. Okay, that does it. You, me, outside. Now, he stated darkly, his eyes brimming with determination. Nah, I'll pass, he responded. Sasuke slammed his hands on the desk, causing small cracks to appear underneath his clenched fists. That wasn't an offer. That was a demand. Sasuke snarled, already turning to walk out the door. Naruto sighed. At least it would be more fun than just sitting here. Training field. The class crowded around the sidelines, whispers rippling through the crowd of the upcoming battle. Sasuke stood on one end and Naruto on the other, his hands still in his pockets. Fight for real, Sasuke muttered, taking a stance. Naruto moaned. I don't think your fangirls would like if I killed you, Naruto answered simply. Sasuke growled. He was so going down. Taking a deep breath, he raised his fingers to his mouth, preparing for one of his infamous techniques. Come at me. Give it your all. Sasuke growled, his stance poised and straight, perfect in every way. Naruto on the other hand just stood in silence, his hands still in his pockets. I don't think your fangirls would appreciate if I killed you, the blonde answered smoothly, glancing at the barricade of girls boredly. Most of them wore a furious expression, they had had enough of this newcomer. He actually thought he could beat Sasuke. A few just looked on in interest. Who cared what happened to the Uchiha? They needed some excitement in this class, and the new kid was sure stirring it up a bit. You can take him, Sasuke, Ino cried, pushing herself into the front line. Her eyes flickered to Naruto's face, and she faltered in her step for half a second, but she quickly covered that mistake up as soon as it had appeared. Sakura stood beside her, her eyes wide. She couldn't feel a chakra sense from the blonde, not even a glimmer of power that every ninja held. It was odd for a shinobi not to have any chakra at all, they were always born with a flare of the blue aura. And yet, this teen didn't have a speck. He was going to get creamed. I will beat you, Sasuke assured, breathing steadily, preparing for the jutsu that would finish the fight before it began. Naruto scoffed. You couldn't beat me if I were dying on the floor. He replied simply, the confidence in his tone overwhelming, and completely believable. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, his brow furrowing. Time to end this waste of time. Kaden. Gukaku no Jutsu. Sasuke yelled, sucking in as much air as possible, and then breathing out, a large stream of fire rocketing towards the blonde. Naruto didn't budge, not even an inch, as the flames engulfed his body, the burning inferno licking at the grass beneath his form, scorching a blackened circle in the field. The crowd's eyes widened. He hadn't even tried to move. Sasuke smirked. So much for his talk. But his smile disappeared as he felt a presence behind him. He whipped around, confronting the one that was angering him. How could you have dodged that? We all saw you. It hit. Sasuke growled, not one to be outdone. Naruto shrugged, kicking at the grass boredly. I merely sidestepped. He answered. Sasuke's eyes widened, shocked yet again. He had been surprised more times today than he had been since he started the academy. Why you could dodge my greatest attack, Sasuke muttered, talking more to himself than the boy in front of him. Naruto frowned, his eyebrows furrowing. Greatest? Seriously? I was hoping you were, more. The prodigy Uchiha ought to be the best. Like your brother. Naruto said, striking Sasuke's weak point. Just hearing the mention of that man, made the Uchiha incredibly mad, a new sense of power rising up. He roared, leaping at the blonde, only to grab nothing but air. Where'd you go, bastard? Sasuke growled under his breath. A hard jab from behind caused him to sprawl forward, almost losing his footing. Regaining control, he spun on his heel, still bent in half, and aiming a swipe at the bottom of Naruto's shins, attempting to knock him off balance. The Jinchuriki simply jumped in his place, avoiding the blow, and flipped backwards, landing 10 feet away from where Sasuke stood, panting. The Uchiha glared at the boy, he was making him look bad in front of his entire class. Making the Uchiha look weak. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, the knuckles turning white. Iruka took a step forward into the field, raising his hands in peace. Okay. Very good Sasuke. Your jutsu is coming along great. Back to class everyone, he yelled, trying to break up the fight before someone really got hurt. Naruto nodded in agreement. You should listen to your sensei. Don't want to get yourself gravely injured before our graduation test tomorrow, Naruto added, smirking on the inside. He just loved messing with Master Itachi's younger brother. Quiet. I will see this fight through to the end. And I will be victorious. He snarled, flashing over to where Naruto stood in an instant. Performing a perfect roundhouse kick, he shot it at Naruto's head. But the blonde easily evaded the attack, slipping down and out of the grasp Sasuke was trying to get him in. Watching his opponent's moves, Sasuke forcefully pushed himself off the ground and came back around, this time going for Naruto's chest. But the newcomer danced away, his hands never leaving his pockets. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. That's it. The raven-haired boy ripped a kunai from his holster and spun in around on his point finger expertly, clutching it so that it was pointed toward the ground, in a maneuverable position. He ran at Naruto one last time, set on making this his last attack. Naruto rolled his eyes, as if a kunai was enough. For his last move, Naruto decided to play it up a notch, just for the audience. He closed his eyes. Sasuke was taken aback for a moment, but quickly dove back into his ninja thinking status. Ha! He's giving up. I expected more, Sasuke hollered, lashing out with his arm, the point headed straight for the boy's side. The class's eyes widened. Sasuke was going to kill him. Then, he was gone. Sasuke's blade met nothing but the air around him, again. Ino almost screamed when she saw Naruto appeared right behind the Uchiha, who had absolutely no idea he was there. With a swift and sharp jolt to his back, Sasuke was sent flying, skidding across the field, uprooting grass and dirt, and landed in a twisted heap in the upper right corner. Everyone held their breath as Naruto flashed over to Sasuke's unmoving body, bending down to where his face was buried in the ground. So did I, Naruto muttered in reply. Sasuke clenched his jaw in fury. He was going down. Naruto smirked inwardly at the boy's anger and then calmly walked off the battlefield. A round of applause broke out amongst the boys while the Uchiha's fangirls just glared at the blonde's back, fire in their eyes. How dare he hurt their Sasuke? The only girls that weren't in a funk over the emo boy were Ino, Hinata, Tenten and Sakura. All were in shock that the Sasuke Uchiha, #1 top ninja in the class, had just been taken down by someone that had just randomly appeared that afternoon, and with no records of training beforehand. In an instant, Naruto was surrounded by 3 of the class's boys, one of them being the brunette that had tried to prank him earlier. Man, you are awesome, said Teen exclaimed, the puppy on his head barking in agreement. Yeah, you really showed Sasuke, the kid next to him added. He wore a brown pants and a cream-colored shirt, in which a red symbol was imprinted. Over that, he wore a short-sleeved green jacket, also accompanied by a long white scarf, reaching down to his knees. His arms and legs were wrapped in white bandages, and he donned the standard ninja shoe. On his cheeks were thin, red swirls, and he had that baby kid of face, innocent and smiling. He deserved that beat down. Acting all superior all the time. The last one said, watching the clouds roll by lazily. His brown hair was tied up in a high ponytail, spiked out crazily, looking like the top of a pineapple. He had black pants, and a netting shirt, covered by a light green short-sleeve jacket, ending at the top of his rib cage. He had 2 small, silver earrings hanging from his ears. He held out his hand, smiling slightly. The name's Shikamaru. And this is Choji and Kiba, he said. Naruto glanced at each of the others in turn and then stared warily at the hand offered to him. Slowly, he reached out to meet it, taking a loose grasp. Shikamaru smirked. Choji and Kiba smiled behind him. So, we never caught your name, Kiba commented. Naruto sighed. Here we go. My name is of no importance, nor do you have a need to know it. Now if you'll excuse me, I have to go and train. Naruto replied coldly, shoving his way past the confused academy students and walking a short distance, disappearing in a flash. In the center of a field, close to the edge of the village, Naruto was balanced on one hand, eyes closed. He breathed even and steady, focusing on being still and motionless, masking his chakra sense completely of course. The art of patience had always been harder for the boy to learn than ninjutsu. But after years of Itachi's training and words of wisdom, Naruto had grown accustomed to being silent and tranquil, becoming one with the world around him. His peace was shattered when a shrill whining erupted from his mic, causing him to snap out of his immobile state, sending him sprawling to the ground. Muttering profanities, he peeled himself off the forest floor, raising a hand to answer the call. You ruined my focus, he said stubbornly, already knowing who it would be. There was a chuckle from the other end. Always training. How about making some friends? Itachi replied, testing the child's intellect. Naruto sighed inwardly. You told me to stay as distanced as I can. Don't talk to anyone unless spoke to and never reveal anything of value. Naruto answered robotically, staring at his feet. Itachi smiled. Good. Very good. Now, how was your first day as a spy? The Uchiha questioned, moving on to business. Naruto shrugged, momentarily forgetting that they were on intercom. not sitting next to each other. Fine, but quite boring most of the time. Class is full of pranksters and know-it-alls. Oh, and fangirls. Things didn't kick up until the fight, the blonde explained, picking at a piece of grass. Itachi's end was silent for a few minutes, and Naruto began to think they had lost connection. Master Itachi, he called, making a move to adjust the station. Fight? His teacher questioned hesitantly, as if afraid of the answer. Yay. Your little brother, Sasuke. He's a pain in the you-know. Acting so superior. Naruto rambled. The dark-haired teen gasped, his eyes widening. You meet Sasuke? He said again, whispering. Yes. The 12-year-old replied. Itachi released the breath he didn't know he was holding, his thoughts running wild. Listen to me, Naruto, and listen well. I don't want you to get close to Sasuke, at all. He could ruin the entire plan, and then you'll be caught, along with the rest of us. Do you understand? He commanded quickly. Naruto sat in shock for a few seconds, but shook himself out of that daze quickly. Okay, course Master Itachi. He muttered in reply, still confused as to why his sensei would react like that. I mean, I was just his little brother, who had failed to succeed him in the Uchiha path as of yet. Good. Now, I must take my leave of you. The organization has a meeting tonight, and I am still one country away. Stay in contact, keep your lines open. I will be checking on your progress soon. And remember, stay secluded. Itachi explained, seeming cheery again. And then he was gone, the line buzzing with static. Naruto sighed and switched the device off, not really wanting to return to training. So, he easily jumped into a walk, strolling towards his old apartment. The sun was settling behind the Hokage's monument now, and the village people were beginning to retreat to their homes, the teens and drinkers coming out to play. Along the path, he could feel the hot glares on his back, the killing intent coming from almost every one of those people. During his training, he had built up an immunity to the stares and gawks of people, the fact being that they had passed through so many towns while traveling. But those looks had been on interest, or curiosity. He hadn't felt the hated glares of the villagers for so long, and it still got to him. Naruto sighed, his cerulean eyes letting a little sadness leak past their barricade of boredom. The academy class buzzed with excitement and nervousness, everyone talking in small groups, giving encouragements and making bets as to who was going to do better. Yes, it was the day of the graduation test, and the room was full of life, every student practically on the edge of their seats in anticipation for the upcoming tests, and hopefully, graduation parties. But the most concentrated subject was one of the class's most favorite pastime discussions. Did you hear about his latest adventure? Ino whispered to her group of friends, which consisted of Sakura, Hinata, and Ten. Yay, my mom told me that she had heard the captain talking about it. Amazing, isn't it? Ten answered, smiling. The three girls nodded in agreement. They were talking about none other than the hero that had spread across the nations in a matter of years, stretching from simply stopping burglars moving all the way up to taking down armies single-handedly. He went by the name of Fire Fox, the fact being that he knew so many fire jutsu above all others. When word of this hero first came about, a great fraction of the class believed that it was Sasuke, due to the fact that he was exceedingly excellent at fire-type attacks and that he disappeared before the village's forces of ninja arrived, not a trace of him left. But that assumption was quickly killed when more news of the unknown ninja's deeds leaked around the nations. He had been traveling all over the countries, starting in the sea country and moving into the lower regions of the fire country. He had recently been reported in a major trading town down south, called Kazuaki Port. He had stopped a kidnapping of the Lord's daughter, which happened to turn out to be one of their trading partners. The man had planned to hold the girl for a grand ransom, causing the Lord to become so poor, the trading facility would need to be shut down, leaving all the business for his port. Fire Fox was quickly becoming a legacy around the world. It really makes you wonder who they really are. Hinata stuttered, playing with her fingers while she spoke. Yay. And why he's doing it. Risking his life for people he doesn't know. Talk about a true hero. Ino replied, getting a dreamy gleam in her eyes. The boys behind them rolled their eyes, they could be such girls. If you ask me, he's probably in it for fame, or the money, Kiba commented, jumping into their conversation. Kiba, he's obviously a caring, merciful, and generous person, Ino exclaimed, shooting to defend the hero. Kiba scoffed. As if he wants the high payment that goes with each deed. I mean, take a look at the facts. Lords, cages, wealthy landowners, and little old ladies, and poor people, and children, and even beggars. Sakura interrupted, smirked smugly. Kiba cut off, his expression turning into one of deep thought. Whatever. I still think it's all about the money. He muttered, leaning back into his chair. If he really wanted the riches Kiba, he would have revealed his presence by now, Hinata pointed out. The three other girls stared at the brunette in victory while he searched for a reason to diss the ninja in question. Finding none, his smile dipped into a defeated frown. The four girls laughed. Point 1. Sakura said, high fives breaking out amongst the group. Kiba crossed his arms firmly across his chest, pouting as if he were 5 again. At that moment, Iruka walked into the room, causing all of the chattering students to scramble to their seats, falling over one another. Following the Chunin was the leader of the village, the Sandaime Hokage. He wrinkled face lifted up into a gentle smile when he saw all the gawking faces. Iruka turned to face the class, the attendance board clutched in his hands. Today is the day of the final exam, where your abilities will be tested, to determine if you are ready to move on to Genin. Me, and the Hokage will be scoring your assessment, and if you pass, you will pick up your forehead protector at the desk. Now, first up will be, Aburame, Shino. Iruka explained, calling out the first name on the clipboard. A kid in the back stood up and began the descent to the floor, avoiding any eye contact from anybody else. His outfit was simple, black pants, a long light green jacket that covered half of his face and black sunglasses, hiding his eyes. In a couple words, he was creepy and mysterious. But nothing more than that, seeing he had never said much, no one really knew much about him. The three disappeared into a room in the front, and as soon as the door closed, the talking continued, students scattering across the room to return to their groups. Ino, Sakura, Hinata, and Ten all huddled up, discussing the latest fashion trends. Behind them, Kiba, Choji, and Shikamaru sat relaxed, discussing their thoughts on video games and random ideas that came to mind. Across the room was the rest of the class, all gathering together to play a game of Genige, a card match they had apparently created in the study time Iruka always gave them at the end of the day. And lastly, the lone Uchiha sat in the front corner, furthest away from all the commotion. He had his hands folded, and his chin rested on top of them, staring into space, his favorite pastime position. The only one missing was the new kid, and every few minutes, someone's eyes would flash to the door, scoping to see if the newest topic of interest was arriving. About 5 minutes after they had left, they were back again, Shino wearing a shiny, Konoha headband. A few of the kids, Ood, and Ahhed, whispering to their friends about how that would be them next, strolling out of that room victoriously, and sporting a ninja headband. Akamichi Choji, Iruka hollered, waiting for the boy rise. The teen gulped nervously, clutching the bag of chips in his hands rather hardly, causing some of them to reduce to nothing but dust. His friends gave him an encouraging pat on the back, murmuring, "Good lucks," and, "You can do it." Slowly, he made his way down the steps and into the room, Iruka following close behind. A creaking from the door turned everyone's attention away from their conversations and to the door. And in walked the boy everyone had been so anxious to see. Still donning that, "I'm really don't want to be here," expression, Naruto walked calmly into the room, dropping into a chair in the first row, a good length away from the rest of the class and an even greater length away from Sasuke. Said raven-haired boy narrowed his eyes and turned away from him, glaring at the wall. Naruto smirked. "Hormones raging today, are they? Is that why you're acting like such an over-emotional girl?" Naruto chuckled, pushing the boy's buttons for the second time in less than 24 hours. Sasuke's eye twitched, his scowl deepening. He didn't bother to face the newcomer, but he couldn't take that, and Uchiha wouldn't be beaten. "You should watch what you say. I'll beat you down into the ground faster than you can say another comeback," Sasuke growled. Naruto laughed on the inside, but remained calm and composed on the outside. "Really? Well, as I do recall, you aren't that much of a threat," Naruto answered, tilting back in his chair, closing his eyes peacefully. Sasuke growled under his breath. "I've improved," he promised darkly. Naruto's mouth lifted up in a tiny smile at that. "No one could progress enough to beat me in only a day. Especially not you," Naruto replied. Sasuke whipped around, ready to give the blonde the fight of his life, but at that moment, Iruka and Choji emerged, the triumphant boy wearing a headband proudly upon his head. His friends burst out into a round of applause, smiling congratulations and admiration. Iruka's eyes flashed over to the trembling Uchiha, and followed his glare to Sasuke's target. "Ah, so glad you could join us nah," Iruka started, but once noticing the warning glare he was receiving from the blonde, he knew that the boy did not want his name spoken aloud. "Newcomer," Iruka finished, covering his mistake. A little late though, as the rest of the class had caught his misstep, and was watching the boy with thought, as though trying to come up with a name for him. Rhea Bulistoria. A dark-haired brunette bounced down the stairs, a confident smile stretched across her face. As soon as Iruka pineapple-like hair vanished from sight, 7 academy students surrounded him. "So, your name starts with a na, huh?" Kiba inspected, gaining a group eye roll from the rest of the group. "I think you mean na," Sakura corrected. Naruto sighed. "Again, this is really beginning to grow annoying. Yes, it begins with na. But that's all you're going to get, because I'm not going to tell you," Naruto answered harshly. "PSH, who said we wanted you to tell us? We're gonna find out for ourselves," Kiba replied, posing in a thinking position. Naruto scoffed. "Whatever," he answered, tilting back in his chair again, his long blonde hair shadowing his eyes. "Haruno Sakura," Iruka called, Rhea waltzing out proudly, the infamous protector shimmering on her upper arm. Sakura bounced up from her position on the floor and walked into the room, chewing nervously on her bottom lip. "Let's see. Starts within, Kiba pondered, his brow furrowing in thought. "Nawaki," Shikamaru threw out. Naruto just scoffed and closed his eyes. Maybe he could catch some Zzzs while the genin wasted their time in an effort to guess the name they would never get. The blonde must have actually passed out too, because the next thing he knew was the feeling of the burning gaze of a certain Uchiha as he walked past him, heading into the testing room. He glanced around, shocked that he had been asleep for only a few minutes, when really, it had felt like hours. All around him, the newly graduated students were still on the name subject, their new headbands gleaming, ranging from their foreheads, their waists, their necks, or arms. Suddenly, at that moment, Naruto had an urge to wear one of those same protectors, to be marked as one of Konoha's ninja. But the boy quickly shook away that thought. Don't get attached, don't get attached. Don't even think about it. Yamanaka Ino. Iruka called, making it down to the last few on the list. Sasuke strode out of the exam room, his charcoal eyes shining with victory. Strapped to his forehead was the Konoha headband that everyone here was striving for. As Ino passed the dark boy, She blushed slightly, but less than she usually would. A majority of the class was taken aback. Wow. She usually tackles him if he gets in a quarter-mile area. Kiba commented, smiling mischievously. Ino whirled around and stuck her tongue out childishly before disappearing inside the room. Once the blonde-haired girl vanished, the group returned their attention to the other blondes sitting at the table, who meet their gaze, completely clueless. Now, we've been guessing for about 20 minutes now, and we still haven't figured it out. Could you just tell us now? Kiba whined, rubbing his head as if he had been in intense thinking for more than mere minutes. Naruto rolled his eyes. They could be so pathetic. I'll tell you one more time. There is no way in this lifetime that you could ever make me tell you my. Naruto. Iruka shouted, calling off the last name on the board, which had been scrawled on quickly that morning. But the second those words left his mouth, he regretted it. Naruto shot him a glare so deadly, it would have burnt him to a crisp on the spot, and Naruto was trying really hard to too. The genin around him smiled in victory, their eyes dancing brightly. So, your name is Naruto, huh? Kiba said, barely containing a laugh. Naruto moaned and stood up, walking over to where Iruka stood in waiting. As he passed, he whispered one word to the Chunin. Nice. He muttered, ignoring the high fives and words of congratulations from the genin behind him. Naruto sighed, running his hand over the engraving on the cool metal. He was now officially part of the village, mixed in the sea of genin that would become his teammates in the next 24 hours. And for the next few months, Naruto would wait, anticipating Itachi's plan. The blonde walked into a rather large clearing, a skylight in the trees, showing the twinkling stars above. Being so far from the village, the glow of lamps and street lights didn't fade the wonders of the universe out. The boy smirked a little, a warm feeling filling throughout his body. He had always loved stargazing, ever since he started his journey with Master Itachi. Being ninja on the run, they rarely ever slept in a building. Most of the time they just pulled off the road and rested in trees, hidden from passers-by by the branches of the higher area. Naruto's infrequent moment of happiness was wiped away into curiosity when he heard a fanatical laughter coming from behind the shed. He walked silently over, for once his own thoughts taking over his natural instinct to walk away. He jumped noiselessly onto the roof, clambering over until he could see the object of his wonder. Down below, a shinobi was sitting in a patch of long grass, leaning against the wooden building. He was dressed in the standard Chunin uniform, his green jacket blending with the lawn around him. His white hair was the only flaw with his disguise, gleaming white like a light amongst all the dark color of the forest. Resting at his side was a large scroll, only a few inches smaller than the blonde himself. It was unraveled, and the man was studying the words that were splashed upon it. He. Once I learn these jutsu, the village will be mine. The shinobi muttered to himself, sounding as if he had gone partially insane. Naruto's eyes narrowed and his gaze flickered to the forehead protector on his head, the leaf symbol glowing brightly. Suddenly, the teen was filled with an emotion he hadn't felt in a long while. He felt determined, like he needed to stop the shinobi before him from committing the dastardly deed he was planning. Naruto couldn't understand. Why would he care for a village that hated him, despised him, before they even gave him a chance? Why did he feel like he wanted to stop the man, instead of stand by with a bowl of popcorn and watch first-handed as the village burned to the ground? The blonde shook himself out of his thoughts, coming to a conclusion. He simply wanted to stop him because if he took down the leaf, then Master Itachi's plans and dreams would be lost, be nothing. Naruto sighed. Oh well. He coiled agilely, springing down from the roof without difficulty, landing with a soft thud in front of the traitorous shinobi. The man's eyes flashed up to his, full of confusion and shock. He certainly hadn't been expecting a visitor. Naruto stood up to full height, crossing his arms over his chest stiffly. I don't believe that belongs to you. Naruto said darkly, his cerulean eyes dully watching the man's reaction. The white-haired ninja just sat there in a daze, gawking, as he tried to grasp the idea that he had been caught. But soon enough, the man was forced out of his daze when Naruto took a step forward, his eyes on the scroll. The shinobi snatched the parchment away, rolling it back up with a flick of a wrist. "It's mine now," he snarled, clutching it to his chest protectively. Naruto rolled his eyes, because a pair of scrawny arms could stop him from getting what he wanted. "You're messing with the wrong guy," Naruto muttered, stepping towards him again. The man followed, stepping backwards in retreat. "As if a lowly genin like you could take me, a chunin of the leaf down. I am Mizuki, and I am great," the man laughed. Naruto scoffed. "You don't deserve to wear that symbol," the blonde continued, taking another step forward. He raised his head, boring his gaze into the man's eyes, his expression neutral. The ninja stumbled backwards. The feel of the boy's gaze made him feel uneasy, even if it was only a newly graduated genin. How could a child so young have such an intense sentiment of power radiating from him? Mizuki's eyes gave the boy a once-over, measuring him up if he decided to attack. His stare paused though when he got to the boy's face. His brow furrowed as he studied the whisker-like marks on his cheeks, they seemed oddly familiar. Realization hit, and his eyes went wide. A million different emotions ran through his eyes in a wave: fear, misunderstanding, confusion, suspicion, doubt, confirmation, anger, and hatred. His teeth clenched, and he smiled unexpectedly. "You don't deserve the headband either. You don't even deserve the right to be walking amongst mankind. The name ninja is wasted on you, you aren't anywhere close to being a hero or a helper," he shouted, pointing his finger accusingly at the 12-year-old boy. Naruto shrugged. "Who ever said I was a hero or a helper?" he replied simply. Mizuki chuckled. "You're right. Those are both human, aren't they? No, you fit different standards. You are a demon spawn, the lowest subject of life on this earth. You don't justify to be walking upon the earth, and you most certainly aren't worthy of a life. You were supposed to be killed off years ago, demon," he ranted, making it clear about what he was talking about. "I wonder how you even survived. I bet you sucked the life out of people until you met your hunger for death," he added. Naruto scoffed. "I'm not a vampire," the blonde said. The man laughed. "Of course you aren't. You're worse than a vampire, or 1,000 enemy ninja marching from the horizon. You are the nine-tailed fox," the shinobi announced grandly, watching the teen's expression carefully. But to his shock, he just stood there, staring at him with the same dull expression he had been for the past few minutes. "Tell me something I don't know." Mizuki's expression dissolved into confusion, fading away from the pure triumph it was only seconds ago. You knew? Then that should make you even more furious, more compelled to kill that thing. But why would you do that? You'd only be killing yourself, and besides, he is your only ally," Mizuki exclaimed, the raging gleam retuning. Naruto's fists clenched. This was always the touchiest of subjects with him. It made his blood boil when he heard naive people addressing him as the demon itself, as if he were really the murderous killing machine, instead of only being its container. "I'm blown away that you would even think of showing your face around here. I mean, returning to the place where everyone wants you dead, thinking that they would accept you for you. The idea is insanity." Naruto could feel the anger and rage bubbling up from the deepest pit of his stomach, the absolute killing intent becoming his own ideals and priorities. To see the man cold and lifeless was his goal now. The blonde had felt this only a few times in his life, twice when he was training with Itachi. His master had commanded him to seal away those feelings, they would only lead to his downfall in a battle. He explained that it was only his hatred toward the villagers coming back to haunt him, and his best way around it was to force it down and ignore, and to never use it. So Naruto did just this. He closed his eyes in concentration, centering his focus on the spot where he could feel the intent radiating from the most. He pushed against it, feeling the strong resistance straining his muscles. After a few seconds without a budge, the force began to move slowly, ever so slowly, back into the darkness, where it would hide, waiting for another chance to be released. He returned to reality, his breath coming short. He always felt out of breath when he did this, like it had cost him his entire store of stamina. Mizuki was staring at him in bewilderment, not knowing what he was going to do. Naruto inhaled deeply, and calmly said, "Just give me the scroll, and I'll forget this ever happened." But Mizuki wouldn't have it. He tied to his back with an awaiting string, his sneer promising a fight. "Never." He chuckled in return, his sanity starting to come into question. Naruto sighed. Well, there was no way around it now. The blonde crouched and then vanished into thin air, seeming as if he'd never been there in the first place. Mizuki searched wildly around the clearing, looking for his seemingly invisible opponent. A blow from the back knocked the air out of his lungs and caused him to stumble forward. He whipped around, ready to counter with a blow of his own. But to his surprise, Naruto had already disappeared, on the move again. The blonde flashed into sight, his roundhouse kick aimed straight for the right side of Mizuki's face. It hit its mark, sending the Chunin to the ground. Naruto landed soundlessly in front of the fallen man, his expression unreadable. Sheesh, if the Chunin are this bad, then I'd hate to see the rest of the Genin class's abilities. The white-haired shinobi peeled himself off the ground, and while Naruto was thinking, he lashed out with a blind blow, heading for the center of Naruto's stomach. He danced to the left, avoiding the blow easily, making the man fall forward. He quickly regained his stature and wheeled around on his heel, sweeping Naruto's knee. The blonde started to fall backwards, a perfectly undefended position for an attack, but fast as light, he was back springing onto his feet again, his hands up and ready. His eyes flickered around the battlefield, planning his attacks and defenses, his dodges and strikes. He was drawn instantly to the sight of the treetops. They were outlined by a soft glow of yellow, signaling daylight. It's morning already. By the looking of the shadows that were beginning to emerge, it was still rather early, the academy probably wasn't even open yet. Still, he wanted to get there soon. The layout of the academy was only a fractional part of Itachi's plan. Better finish this fast. Naruto dodged another punch from Mizuki's end and answered with one of his own, enhanced with his chakra, making the strike 10 times as hard as his normal hits are. It hit dead center, right on Mizuki's left temple. The force from the blow was bone-shaking and made Mizuki fall to the ground in a daze. He shook his head furiously, trying to return his vision. "I will beat you. I am the great Mizuki," he shouted, his eyelids drooping with unconsciousness. Well, might as well speed this process up. Yeah. Great, unbeatable, blah blah. Naruto muttered, forcefully injecting a small shot of his chakra into one of the man's pressure points. His eyes went wide and in a matter of seconds, the shinobi was out cold. Naruto slung the man over his shoulder, untying the scroll from his back. "Now to make my returns, take out the trash and then it's off to school," he murmured, hopping onto the nearest branch and heading off in the direction of the Hokage's tower. Later that morning, the class was buzzing with life, every genin excited for their first day as official Leaf Ninja. All but 3 people were involved in the happiness: Sasuke, who was just staring at the wall, Shino, who was inspecting a bug that had flown into the class, and Naruto, who was sound asleep in his chair. Iruka walked into the room, the door closing heavily behind him, jarring the blonde out of his slumber. "Congratulations. You are on the last leg of your academy career, ready to move on into the world of the shinobi. Today, you will be assigned to your sensei, who will give instruction from then on how they see fit. So pay attention and listen up," Iruka said, looking each student in the eye as he spoke. When he was absolutely sure that everyone was moderately tuned in, He raised his clipboard and began to read out names and teams. Team 7 will be Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke smirked slightly, his gaze turning in Naruto's direct for a split second. Sakura Haruno. Sakura smiled. The same team as Sasuke. Take that Ino. And Naruto. Naruto smiled while Sasuke frowned. Share a squad with him. Oh boy, this could get interesting. I wonder if Sasuke frowned any deeper if his face would break. Your sensei will be Kakashi Hatake. Now, Team 8 will be Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame. Your sensei will be Yuahi Kurenai. Team 10 will be Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akamichi, and Shikamaru Nara. Your instructor will be Asuma Sarutobi. The class buzzed excited as new team members greeted one another and friends gave words of congratulations and encouraging. Sasuke glared at Naruto, Sakura gawked at Sasuke, and Naruto was trying to ignore them all. He wanted nothing more than to blow this off and sleep or train, anything was better than this. Your sensei will be here shortly and from then on out, they will instruct you on what to do, Iruka explained. A few hours later, Iruka's academy classroom was empty, all of their students with their new teams, well, all except for 3 of them. 2 hours. The man is 2 hours late. Naruto stated, even he was beginning to get annoyed at how long it was taking this guy to get here. Talk about a great first impression. Sakura muttered in addition. She was laying on her back on the floor, watching the ceiling in complete and utter boredom. Sasuke was doing the same thing he did every day and only gave them a HN in response. I say we just bail. Let him come looking for us, Naruto suggested. Sakura glanced at him as he watched the clock, his eyes following the second hand like it was his job. That wouldn't be a very good first notion on our part, Sakura commented. Naruto only shrugged. The guy can think whatever the hell he wants to. I don't really care. What I do care about is that we have been sitting here alone for about an hour and a half. This time could have been used to train, or sleep, or something much more interesting than this. The blonde ranted, saying the most words he's uttered since the second he got there. Well, we could take the time to get to know each other better, you know, bond, Sakura offered. Both Sasuke and Naruto stared blankly at her and the next few seconds passed by in silence. Never mind. She sighed, realizing that she wasn't going to get much enthusiasm from these two. 1 hour later. That's it, I'm so gone. Naruto muttered as he rose from his chair, heading over to the window. But before he could reach the opening, in a burst of smoke, a man was standing in front of him. And where do you think you're going? He asked, his only visible eye narrowing. Naruto glanced up, giving him a once-over. Leaving. He answered simply. Not if I have a say about it. The man replied without hesitation, his gaze steady. Naruto raised an eyebrow, questioning him. But soon enough, he shrugged and walked back over to where the other two were waiting. Now, I am Kakashi Hatake, your sensei. I didn't know we were gonna be taught by a Cyclops. They certainly left that out of their description. Naruto commented quietly, gaining a giggle from Sakura. Kakashi sighed. Oh great, a comedian. Look, I'm about as thrilled to be here as you guys, so let's make today quick and painless, okay? Kakashi said, looking at the 3 in turn. After a while with no response, he sighed. Just meet me on the roof. He muttered, vanishing in a poof of smoke. At first, they only sat there, staring at the spot where he once stood. Well, I guess we better head up there, Sakura said, pulling herself off the ground. Naruto and Sasuke groaned and reluctantly stood from their chairs and followed their pink-haired teammate to the stairs that would take them to the roof. The roof. Kakashi sat on a pole, overlooking the front entrance to the academy a good 3 stories down. He was reading a small orange book and giggling occasionally as he waited for his students. What the hell are you reading? A voice interrupted him, causing the masked Junin to jump. Naruto was looking over his shoulder, scanning the lines of writing on the pages. Kakashi snapped the book shut and tucked it in his vest pocket. Wow, you must be a really suckish Junin if you hadn't sensed him coming, Naruto commented, sitting on a cement step as the other two joined him. Kakashi's eye narrowed. He masked his chakra so well that I couldn't sense him coming. Most genin don't know how to do that. Well, I have a routine to follow, so let's try and make it through this first train wreck out of the many to come, okay? Alright, tell me your name, hobbies, likes, dislikes, and dreams. Starting with you, he said, pointing to Sakura. My name's Sakura Haruno. My hobbies are gardening and being with my friends. I like to study medical journals, and my dislikes would be Ino bugging me constantly about, well, yay. My dream is to become a great medical ninja, seeing as I'm not that great at ninjutsu, the girl said, blushing when she came about her dislikes. Kakashi rolled his eyes inwardly, along with the other male members of the team. Great, a fangirl. Your next emo boy, Kakashi said, pointing at Sasuke. My name's Sasuke Uchiha. My only like is training, my dislikes are most of everything else, I don't have a hobby, and my dream is to kill off the man who murdered my family, he replied in a monotone voice. An Avenger. That could raise some issues in the future. Since I'm a nice guy, I'm going to save you the trouble. My name's Naruto, I don't have a hobby, a like or a dislike, and my dreams are of none of your concern, Naruto said simply. Kakashi raised an eyebrow at his response. Well, don't they make an interesting group? The lovesick fangirl, the emo Avenger, and the mystery. The name's Kakashi, as you know. I don't have a hobby, a couple likes, a few dislikes, and a dream that you don't need to know, Kakashi explained. Isn't that porno book considered a hobby? Naruto commented, gaining a snicker from Sakura and even a small smirk from Sasuke. Shut up, kid. Kakashi replied. Alright, now that introductions are out of the way, let me explain what you'll be doing tomorrow. You may think that you're all ninja, being everywhere you go with that forehead protector, but you're not. You haven't officially passed the genin exams just yet. Kakashi started out. This was his favorite part of the test. His team only stared on in reply, confusion being the only emotion in their eyes. Tomorrow morning, you will be put through a test, where the chances of you failing are 66. I want you to be at training field number 9 at 6 a.m. sharp, and oh, a word of advice, don't eat breakfast. Why not? Naruto asked. You'll puke. Kakashi answered candidly, poofing away in his cloud of smoke. Well, at least it's to the point. Sakura sighed. So far, her team was showing signs of quiet, problematic levels, and now she had to worry about this test tomorrow. I'm off to train, so I'll see you guys at 7, Naruto said. He told us 6. Sasuke stated. Look, I don't expect him to be there until around then, so take my advice, wait until then, Naruto replied before jumping off the roof of the academy and disappearing in mid-fall. With only one look, Sasuke and Sakura went their separate ways, preparing for the challenge ahead of them. Kakashi appeared in the Hokage's office, in front of the old man's desk, book in hand. Sarutobi glanced up from his word, the usually mounting stack only a few reports. Yes, Kakashi, was it? He questioned, dropping the pen to the desk. Kakashi bowed in respect before looking the man seriously in the eyes. It's about my new team, sir. Or rather, a certain member of my team. Kakashi started, Sarutobi already knowing exactly who he was talking about. You mean Naruto? He said. Kakashi nodded. Now, I haven't seen his skills as of yet, but while I was on the roof, distracted, he managed to sneak up on me and take me by surprise, the Junin explained. Sarutobi's eyes narrowed in confusion. I've never heard of a genin able to mask their chakra sense the day after the graduate from the academy, the Hokage commented, his brow furrowing in thought. Kakashi nodded in agreement. I think he must have had training before he returned to the village, and obviously someone with some skill. No ordinary rogue could have taught him how to hide it so well that even a trained Junin couldn't detect it, Kakashi went on. Sarutobi nodded. Yes, this is astounding, and frightening. If he did have training, it was from someone outside these walls. It could have just been all those years in the wild. It would be a necessity to learn to remain undetected by all the enemy ninja he must have been surrounded by daily. The Hokage responded, searching for an answer to this interesting case. Of course, there are all kinds of possibilities. But he just seems too powerful for a kid. I'll be keeping a special eye on him during the bell test tomorrow, Kakashi said. Sarutobi nodded. Good idea. We can't jump to conclusions this early in the matter, but we do need to know how far exactly his skills go. We must keep an eye on Naruto from now on. Sasuke and Sakura groaned in unison. The pair had been standing there for an hour now and still no Kakashi. Hunger had washed over them about 40 minutes ago, and right now, the leaves on the trees were starting to look good. Suddenly, a concentrated wind picked up in the center of the field. Both genin glanced up. Had their sensei finally come? But when the whirling leaves cleared, it was Naruto that stood there, 2 breakfast bagels in hand. You're an hour late, Dobi, Sasuke muttered. Naruto shook his finger in a scolding way. Now, is the way to talk to someone who brought you breakfast, he said sarcastically. We're not supposed to eat, remember? Sasuke shot. Naruto shrugged. He also told me to be here at 6, and yet here I am at 7, he said, handing them each a bagel. Aren't I just the little delinquent today? Sakura and Sasuke exchanged a glance and with a shrug, ate the bagel Naruto had brought them. Said blonde hopped up into a low tree branch, leaning against the trunk and closing his eyes. Sasuke glanced up at him and sighed. I still don't like you, he commented, though the retort didn't sound 100 like it usually did. Naruto smirked. Right back atcha, he replied, falling into a sleep instantly. Sakura watched him curiously. How does he do that? She wondered. But before she could think any farther, a burst of smoke turned their attention away from the snoozing blonde. Good morning. Sorry I'm late. I had to help a little old lady across the street, Kakashi said, his mask crinkling with a smile. Bullshit, Naruto muttered from his position in the tree. Kakashi glanced up at the boy, his eye narrowing. Yes, well, today is your final test and your final chance to actually become true genin and shinobi of the leaf. As you already know, the rate of passing is very low, and with me as your opponent, it lowers those statistics to a minimum, Kakashi explained. Naruto's eyes opened slightly at his last sentence. Opponent? He questioned. Kakashi nodded. He reached into his star pouch and produced 2 small, tinkling bells. Your objective is to get these bells away from me before noon. And once you get them, only then will you get lunch, he said. But there are 2 bells and 3 of us, meaning that one of us goes hungry, Sakura said. Kakashi smirked. She was obviously the brains of the trio. Worse. The third one without a bell goes hungry and gets tied to the post until I see fit to release them. Now, on your mark, get set, go. Kakashi vanished into the woods in a streak of blue and green. Naruto sighed and pushed himself off the tree limb, expertly flipping to the ground. So, any ideas? Sakura asked. Sasuke nodded. Yeah, I go and get one of those bells for myself and you 2 kill each other for the remaining one, he stated darkly, and jumped away after his sensei, leaving Naruto and Sakura alone. And I suppose you want to do the same, right? Sakura guessed, barely glancing at the blonde. Nah, I'm gonna help you get your bell, he said, walking off into the woods, leaving a shocked girl behind. Shaking herself out of her daze, she scrambled after him. What about you? She wondered, watching him closely. Naruto shrugged. I don't want it, he answered simply. But, you'll get tied up to the post. Sakura reminded him. Naruto glanced at her, his eyes holding question. And, he said, waiting as if she had more to say. Being tied to a post isn't that big a deal in my eyes. Not after the things I've seen, the things I've done. Sakura smiled softly. So maybe he does have a heart. Somewhere in the woods, Sasuke and Kakashi stood in a clearing, each facing each other from their opposite side. So, the Avenger comes to face me alone. Are you sure that's a good decision? Kakashi said, flipping a page in his book. Sasuke gritted his teeth in frustration. I can beat you and get that bell without their help, no problem. The boy growled, taking a stance. Kakashi smirked, putting the book in his vest pocket. I'd love a little exercise, but I do believe those teammates of yours are approaching from the north. And something tells me that they'll be a little more interesting than you, he said. Sasuke roared in defiance and dashed toward the Junin, reaching for a bell. But just as his fingers brushed the metal, the ninja was gone, leaving the raven-haired teen to stumble to the ground, smashing his fist into the dirt. I don't think so, he muttered, vanishing in a flash, right behind his fleeing teacher. Naruto and Sakura, do you think that strategy will be enough against him? I mean, Kakashi is one of the best Junin we've had in years, Sakura said, running the idea through her mind again. Naruto nodded. Trust me, it'll work. Naruto confirmed. Suddenly, Naruto stopped dead in his tracks, his cerulean eyes flickering around the trees. Sakura halted next to him, glancing around as well. Naruto, what is it? Then, faster than her eye could see, Naruto whipped around and caught a punch directed at his head, grasping the hand tightly. Are you following me? 'Cause you know, that's called stalking. Naruto said, his fingers tightening around Kakashi's fist. The man smirked. Search and destroy is part of my job as Junin, he replied before flipping out of the boy's hold. He landed almost silently a few yards away, a kunai in hand. Sakura glanced at the blonde and with a brisk nod she formed a simple genjutsu seal. In an instant, Kakashi was surrounded by about 9 blonde shinobi, all of them rushing in on the offense. Kakashi scoffed. As if this could throw me off, he muttered, raising his hands and made a release seal. Release! He yelled. But to his surprise, nothing shifted in his vision, and the multitude of Narutos barraged him, sending him into the air. Each delivered a strong kick to the Junin's back, forcing him higher into the air, rising above the treetops. Just when Kakashi thought they were through pummeling his body, the real teen spring-boarded off another and launched himself above Kakashi, smiling smugly. Then, with a push from behind, Naruto flew through the air, his feet extended and aimed straight at Kakashi's chest. Kakashi narrowed his eyes. They may have gotten him with the fake genjutsu attack, but he wasn't one to be outdone. His hands flew through a string of seals, and with a clap of his hands, released a wave of hurtling air, racing toward the blonde. Fuden. Daitapa! He cried. Just as it looked like the attack was going to hit dead center, Naruto lashed out and grabbed the top of a pin tree, whisking himself out of the way as the great wind flew by harmlessly, knocking a flock of birds out of the air instead. Using the momentum to his advantage, Naruto swung around the tree, and slingshot himself toward the Junin, his body moving at high speeds. Kakashi threw up his hands, barely blocking the punch Naruto threw at him. The blonde answered with a kick to his ribcage, only to be outdone there. The falling pair entered the tree line, hit a multitude of branches as they went, but neither giving up their hold on the other to try and retard their descent. They hit the ground with a boom, hard. Sakura ran up to the large crater where their bodies contacted with the earth, and she tried to wave away the dust that rose from the gaping hole. She didn't think how someone could be able to move after a fall like that, but was quickly proven wrong when the 2 shinobi stumbled out of the hollow, locked in hand-to-hand combat. Sasuke had been thrown into the mix now. He had seen the aerial fight and had jumped right in when they landed. Sasuke swiped at Naruto's head. he certainly wasn't going to let the know-it-all newbie beat him at this test. Naruto expertly flipped away from the battle, his breathing slightly labored. Even his amazing amount of stamina and strength was dented with the fall. His wise cerulean eyes scanned Sasuke and Kakashi's fight, who had seemed to completely forgotten about the blonde and pink-haired shinobi standing nearby. Sasuke was furious that Naruto showed such power so early in life, and the anger had given him a boost, turning him into a blurred ball of blue rage. Kakashi was totally focused on the boy at hand, his back towards the two remaining students. Sakura started to walk over to the blonde teen but stopped short when she saw Naruto's hand reach to his back, slowly sliding his sword out of its sheath. The hilt was a simple black, little swirls of gold twisting throughout the dark, and the blade was a dark gray. Then, in a flash, Naruto was dashing towards the two, his sword skillfully held at his side, spinning in a tight circle for agility. Once he neared the two, he jumped easily into the air and with a downward stroke came down on Kakashi. Sakura's jaw dropped. She hadn't expected the boy to kill their sensei for the bell. But before she could scream in horror, she saw Naruto appear by her side, his sword returned to his back. Sasuke and Kakashi stood a little ways away, both completely unharmed and shocked. Because dangling in Naruto's hand were the two bells, the strings slightly shredded from where Naruto had cut them from Kakashi's belt. We win. Team 7 stood in Training Field 9's open area, Kakashi studying the three. Naruto and Sakura stood off the side, Sakura smiling softly and Naruto looking bored, as usual. Yet, you could still detect a hint of satisfaction in his face. Sasuke sat on the ground, tied with his hands behind him, to one of the large wooden posts in the center of the clearing. He was glaring at the blonde, his onyx eyes blazing with fury. That bell should have been mine. You stole it from me. Sasuke snarled when Naruto glanced in his direction. The boy only shrugged. Maybe you would have gotten it if you had actual talent. Naruto muttered in reply, ignoring the Uchiha as he struggled against his bonds. I will beat you. Sasuke spat. Naruto just blinked in return, making the raven-haired teen even more furious. Kakashi sighed. Well, Naruto and Sakura passed the test, but Sasuke, I have half a mind to send you back to the academy. At this, Sasuke whipped around to face his sensei, disbelief written in his features. What? I'm way stronger than they are. Why would I be sent back while these two continue on? So I didn't get a stupid bell. That doesn't mean I should go back. Sasuke ranted, the anger in his voice the most emotion anyone had heard out of the Uchiha's mouth in a long time. Because they truly understand what it means to be on a team. They found a way to work together, combining their strengths into an incredible force and covering their weaknesses as one. You have not even begun to grasp the thought that the test wasn't about your strength or even your smarts. It was to see how well you'd work together as a team, to see if you would actually work out in the real ninja world, Kakashi explained, an unknown gleam shining in his eyes. It was silent for a good minute, the only sound being the wind in the trees, their leaves rustling to the intense moment beneath them. Then, something happened that signified the world was ending. I guess I have a few things to work on. Sasuke sighed, his ebony eyes dulling until they were back to their normal neutral gaze. He glanced at the two staring at him in shock. And maybe you two can help. He added, though by the tone in his voice, it was taking him a lot of willpower to say all of this. And then, the apocalypse truly kicked off. Naruto smiled. It wasn't one of those fake grins just to get someone off there, and it wasn't one of the sarcastic smirks he was famous for giving. It was a genuine act, sincere and trustworthy. And we will if you let us. Naruto said in return, his voice soft and quiet, with no hint of sarcasm in the least. Sasuke smirked. If he had smiled back, Sakura and Kakashi probably would have had a heart attack. A ninja can have only too much surprise in one day. Kakashi sighed. Well, then, I am happy to say that you all pass. Congratulations and yada yada yada. I want you all at the Hokage's tower tomorrow at 8. It's time to start some missions. He said. This is certainly going to be an interesting group. Later that night, Naruto sat in his apartment, reading some training scrolls. He was lying on his back in the middle of his living room floor, surrounded by a sea of weapons that needed sharpening, scrolls that needed reading, and maps that needed memorizing. It was quite a peaceful scene, and Naruto was enjoying the downtime. Suddenly, in a flash, he was up and on his feet, his sword's point at his intruder's neck. A familiar chuckle filled the room. Naruto quickly lowered his sword when he realized who it was. So sorry, Master Itachi. Naruto murmured, flicking his sword onto his back, and bowing to the man before him. It's no problem. I'm glad to see that this village hasn't affected your senses, yet. But unfortunately, I'm not here on pleasure. I'm here to talk to you about what I instructed a few days ago, Itachi said. Naruto furrowed his brow, looking a little confused. What about it? Well, what exactly did I tell you that I wanted you to do? Itachi asked. Stay distanced, don't show them your true power, and wait for the plan to fall into action, Naruto recited. Itachi nodded. And can you tell me what you did wrong? He said. I don't think I failed, only used about a fourth of my knowledge, power and strength, not telling them much of anything. They found out my name by a slip of my teacher's tongue. And no one suspects a thing. I don't see why. Naruto, really, I've taught you to be more observant than this. If you don't know the reason I'm here, then I must have wasted the last 7 years of my life teaching you, Itachi yelled, his voice harsh. Naruto inwardly recoiled. He hadn't heard Itachi this angry and ruthless in forever. Especially not when it was aimed towards him. I was only showing them basic kindness. I mean, how am I supposed to gain their trust when I'm a cruel bastard all the time? Naruto asked. You are showing them warmth. I told you specifically to be detached. Itachi spat. I'm just being a normal human. But you aren't normal. You are much more extraordinary, and associating with these people will dull your chances of fulfilling your dream of becoming a legend, one that will make these people regret ever treating you the way did, Itachi said. I don't see how a little breakfast and a helping hand is putting out plan in jeopardy, Naruto answered. Itachi sighed. It's kindness. Kindness leads to friendship. Friendship leads to weakness. And weakness leads to your demise, Itachi said. Naruto nodded, but he looked a little crestfallen. So, remove myself completely? Naruto asked. Itachi smirked. Exactly. I'll be checking in now and again to keep you up to date on the plan, and to see how you're taking this meeting into effect. Until then, remember what I said, Itachi said. And then, he disappeared in a swirl of black chakra. Naruto grimaced. Whatever you say, master. The next day, Sasuke and Sakura were waiting outside the Hokage's office, both lingering there for their other teammate and sensei. We should have guessed he was going to be late again. Sakura muttered, sliding down the wall and onto the floor. Sasuke's jaw clenched. I knew I should have slept in this morning, Sasuke murmured, banging his head repeatedly against the wall behind him. Their attention was distracted from their frustration when the wind picked up in the hallway. They glanced over, and in a whirl of wind, Naruto appeared, nonchalant and in person. Hey Naruto, Sasuke said, returning back to his distaste and boredom. Sakura smiled. Hi Naruto. What's up? She said cheerfully. The blonde only stared at her blankly and walked over to the other side of the door, standing away from his other two teammates. Sasuke watched him as he moved. What's up with you? He asked. Naruto didn't even spare him a glance, not speaking at all. He leaned against the wall and put his hands in his pockets, not saying a word. Sasuke and Sakura exchanged a look. They could tell something was wrong. But before they could ask him about it, Kakashi turned the corner, his mask crinkled up into a smile. Hello guys. Ready for the torture of D-rank missions? Kakashi said. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Ah yes, the agony of babysitting and weed pulling. Kakashi smirked. Oh you'll see, you'll see. He chuckled as he walked into the Hokage's office. The old man was sitting at his desk, looking through the to-do pile, muttering to himself. Why can't I have an intern or something to do all this paperwork? He whispered. Kakashi cleared his throat and caught the man's attention. He looked up and a kind smile lit his face. Ah, Kakashi. Here for your team's first mission, huh? He said. He looked at the three standing next to the Junin. Hello Sakura, Sasuke, and Naruto. Good to see that you're doing well so far, the Sandaime exclaimed. Naruto only watched him with dull eyes, saying nothing. The Hokage was slightly taken aback by the boy's sudden mood change. He had heard from Kakashi that the boy had adapted quite well and even teamed up with Sakura to get the bells. But now, he seemed as cold and distant as he had the first day he was here. Had someone said something to him to make him act like this? The man shook himself out of his thoughts and smiled again. Okay, let's see what we have here, he said, looking through a pile of D-rank missions. He pulled out a relatively easy one and handed it to Kakashi. Here you go. You'll be cleaning out the river on the far side of town, near the hot springs, the Sandaime explained while Kakashi read the paper. He nodded in understanding and tucked the information into his pocket. Got it. Let's go guys, he ordered, jumping out the nearby window. Sakura and Sasuke hesitated but Naruto just nonchalantly followed, flying out the window in one fluid-like motion. Sasuke shrugged and flipped out the window and Sakura did the same. The Hokage watched as the four leapt away across the rooftops, Naruto having no problem keeping up with Kakashi while the other two were lagging behind slightly. He had definitely had some training done and the person had been more than just a rouge. The question was, who? River. Kakashi sat on the bank, dry and comfortable, reading his book. His three genin on the other hand were thigh-deep in water, picking up tin cans and fast food wrappers off the river's rocky bottom. This sucks. Sakura mumbled under her breath as she bent down to pick up an empty ramen cup. I guess Kakashi was right after all about the whole tormenting thing, Sasuke commented. Kakashi glanced up when he heard his name. Told ya so. The Junin chuckled. He turned his gaze on the other member of the team, who was a couple yards away from the rest of them, silently collecting trash. But oddly enough, the boy wasn't using his hands. He was making slight movements with his fingers and the water would bulge in places, and garbage would appear at the surface of the water, where the boy would then pick it up. When he saw Kakashi watching him, his stopped and the water returned to normal and he bent down, doing it like the other two were. Kakashi sighed. The boy was very secretive, he'll give him that. Sakura walked over to where Naruto was working, manipulating water again. Her eyes widened when she saw what he was doing. How are you doing that? She asked. Naruto didn't even look at her. She watched his expression, though it remained impassive. Are you okay? Naruto didn't answer, only watching his work. Sakura crossed her arms. I can tell something's up. Yesterday you were fine but now you're all depressed like and you won't say a word, Sakura pointed out. Naruto sighed. Why don't you just leave me alone? Naruto muttered. Sakura gasped quietly. What? Naruto turned away from his work and looked straight at her. I don't want to talk to you, so why don't you just walk away and leave me alone? He spat, trying to be as harsh as possible. He hated it, especially since, though he would never admit it out loud, he liked Sakura and Sasuke and wanted to be friends with both his teammates. Sakura's frowned and her jaw clenched. Fine then. I'll leave you alone just like you want. I can't believe I thought you were nice. You're a jerk, she said, walking back toward Kakashi and Sasuke. Naruto watched her go but tore away and went back to his water. As Sakura was walking away, she furrowed her brow in thought. Though he had tried to hide it, she had seen that he was hesitant to say what he said and there was even a little bit of sadness swimming inside those sapphire eyes. She didn't understand it, but it was like he didn't want to say that to her. But if he hadn't wanted to, then why did he? Sakura shook her head in confusion. She would find out, even if he didn't want her to. Once the three were done with the river, they returned to the Hokage's tower for more seemingly easy jobs. In the matter of one day, they pulled weeds out of two people's lawns, babysat for one family, we won't even go into details of how that train wreck went, and walked dogs 3 different times. By the end of the day, the ninja were sick of being ninja, at least Genin anyway. If I see one more dirty diaper, leash, or shovel, I'll scream. Sakura moaned as the three were walking home. The day had been long, boring, back-breaking, and frustrating for all. Sasuke, whose attitude had been better than it had been for years, went straight back down to the emo line. Apparently, he had thought that if Naruto could change, he could too. But when the blonde had proved that he was still his, I don't need or want anyone in my life, self, he reverted back to Mr. Emo Avenger. Whenever he was spoken to, he responded with his infamous, HN, and went back to whatever he was doing. Naruto hadn't said a single word since the river and his eyes were found usually on the ground. They were dull and flat, no emotion at all in the cerulean irises. It got to a point where Sakura thought she must have imagined the sadness she'd seen, but she still hung on to the thought anyways. Sakura stole a sideways glance at Sasuke and a blush immediately flushed her face. So Sasuke, want to go somewhere for dinner? She asked shyly. The Uchiha only shot her a dark, empty stare and clenched his jaw. No, he replied. Sakura wilted slightly. Why not? She wondered. Sasuke subtly rolled his eyes. This whole fangirl thing was getting really annoying. Because I have better things to do, the raven-haired boy shot back. Sakura's shoulders slumped visibly and her jade eyes dimmed a notch. Naruto observed this, and before he could even think about it or stop himself, he said it. Emo freak. Naruto muttered. Sakura glanced at him, shocked he had said anything at all. Sasuke sent a deathly glare at the blonde and he narrowed his onyx eyes. What's you call me? Sasuke asked darkly, his tone dangerous and warning. Naruto only looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. Who called you what? The teen said, looking impassive and unknowing. Sakura suppressed a chuckle and Sasuke gritted his teeth. He scoffed and looked away. Whatever. He murmured, staring ahead at the growing darkness blankly. Hair. Naruto whispered again, a small smirk lighting his face. This time, Sasuke was in front of him in a flash, his coal eyes flashing murderously. You wanna try that again? He seethed. Naruto only shrugged and pushed his way past him, moving next to a now giggling Kunoichi. Sasuke growled under his breath as he moved to Naruto's other side. I'd watch it if I were you. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Naruto smirked even wider. What are you, the Incredible Hulk? He commented. Sakura's smile grew, until it was dominating her face while Sasuke's frown bent so low it looked like it was going to fall right to the ground. Naruto held up his hands defensively. Take it easy, Sasuke, I'm just kidding around. Gosh, has he always been this uptight? Did someone shove a pole up your, or what? Naruto joked. Sasuke snarled. You're one to talk. What about you? Yesterday, you were happy, this morning you were freakish and detached, and now you're normal again. Do you have a split personality or something? The almost smile fell of Naruto's face and his face was as expressionless as it had been all day. I have my reasons. Naruto mumbled, almost too low for anyone to hear it. Well, pick a side. Because you're showing up here, oddly at the end of the year, the fact that you passed the test when no records of training were found. Everything about you is suspicious. Something's up and I think you know exactly what it is, Sasuke pointed out. Naruto flinched inwardly. He had no idea how close he really was. But he didn't let it show on the outside. No way was he going to tip anyone off, no matter what people said to persuade him. On that note, Sasuke veered off the road and headed toward the Uchiha Manor, which was almost like a ghost town. The sense of death and betrayal just wafted off the place in clouds, sending most people scattering. Sakura watched the boy go, and when he was out of sight, she went to talk to her remaining teammate, only to find that he was further down the road. She ran to catch up with him and came to a skidding stop at his side. "Hey, thanks for that back there. It made me feel a lot better," Sakura said, smiling softly. Naruto didn't respond. He only kept his empty eyes on the road. Sakura sighed. I guess that was all he was going to say for the day. Or week. Who really knew? After a few minutes of walking in silence, the two came to a stop in the front of Sakura's house. The front room light was on, meaning that the girl's parents were probably still waiting up for her, though it was almost 10 by now. But before the pink-haired girl walked up to her door, she turned. I don't know why you're trying to hide it, and you might be fooling other people with your facade, but I can tell you have a heart somewhere in there, she said. Naruto glanced up, a little surprise leaking into his expression. And before he could say anything, Sakura turned around and walked through the gate and up to the front door. As she was about to open the door, she snuck a glance backwards and found that Naruto was already gone, passing like a faint wind. Naruto's apartment. Naruto opened the door to his small apartment, tucking the keys into his pocket. He closed and locked the wooden door, though it wouldn't prove to be much protection if anyone tried to attack. He shuffled into the kitchen and absently pulled a cup of instant ramen off the shelf. Placing it over a low open flame, he sat down at the table, his eyes vacant. He thought he was doing good, keeping away from people. Some of the other genin teams had attempted to start a conversation with him earlier, but he had easily blown them off. But oddly, when it came down to his team, he just couldn't help saying something. He couldn't really explain it, and he didn't know why. It was really starting to vex him. After all the years of not caring for a single thing in the world besides Itachi's dream and his own, was he beginning to feel something for them too? After a few minutes of frustrating thought, he decided that it was just because they were so entertaining to mess with, that was all. But then, why had he tried to make Sakura feel better back on the walk home? He didn't actually want to connect with them, did he? He quickly shook himself away from that answer. Of course not. He had only wanted to piss Sasuke off, that was all. But even after all of that, it still didn't feel right. He made a final analysis that he just didn't want to deal with a 12-year-old soap opera after all of that good doing. And with that, the blonde fell asleep at the table, to smell of burning styrofoam filling the room. 5 days later. The past couple of days followed pretty much the same as the first. Naruto, being distanced from, well, everyone. Sasuke, staying in the emo, angry Avenger character he had created for himself, and Sakura, the fangirl that got shot down every night. She had persisted on the fact that Naruto had a heart the entire time, but hadn't gotten a word out of him since the first night as a team. The team had met outside the Hokage's office for another day of D-rank missions when Kakashi showed up, on time for once, and told them to follow him. They were now in the Hokage's briefing room, with the Sandaime, Iruka, and one of the council, Danzo, staring at them from across a long table. The Sandaime frowned slightly. Are you sure they're ready for this, Kakashi? I mean, they graduated only a week ago, the old man said, playing with a scroll in front of him. The one-eyed Junin nodded. I know they can handle it. Besides, it's only an escort. This got all three of the genins' attention. We're going on a C-rank mission? Sakura asked, the excitement in her voice bare. Kakashi smirked. C. Totally ready. The man added. Iruka looked shocked and Danzo looked completely appalled. But Hokage-sama. They only just became shinobi a few days ago. I don't think they're ready for AC rank just yet, Iruka protested. That's not your call to make, Iruka. Kakashi is their teacher now, and if he feels that they're ready, then we have no place to argue, the Sandaime replied. Iruka still looked like he wanted to disagree. He sat back in his chair with a sigh. But Danzo still had to voice his opinion on the whole thing. With all due respect, are you sure that we should be letting Naruto out of the village? I mean, he hasn't been here long. The old man scowled, saying Naruto's name like it was the plague. The blonde noticed this and smirked sarcastically at the council member, causing him to frown deeper. The Sandaime nodded. I see your point, but the boy has proven to be quite the shinobi. I think he deserves a little slack in that department, and they all deserve a break from the D-rank missions, the Hokage replied, his voice firm, meaning the decision was final. Kakashi smiled slightly in victory and stepped up to the desk to receive the mission details. Meanwhile, the three genin were basking in their joy. Awesome. I've never heard of genin getting C ranks this soon into the game, Sakura exclaimed. Sasuke smirked and his eyes portrayed his enjoyment in the idea, and even Naruto was slightly jazzed about the ordeal. At that moment Kakashi returned, slipping the scroll into his star pouch. Now, your client is right outside, so let's bring him in, shall we? The Sandaime said cheerfully, nodding to the Anbu at the door. They bowed in return and opened the door, letting a figure inside. He had shaggy gray hair and his face was starting to wrinkle with age. His beard and mustache were also faded in color and he had small glasses. He was pretty burly for an old man and he wore simple workman's clothes. The man was carrying a whiskey bottle in his hand, so it was obvious he had been drinking. He narrowed his eyes, as if he had trouble seeing the four even though they were right in front of him. These are the shinobi that are supposed to protect Mio on the way home. They're nothing but runts, he said, his voice slurred and heavy with alcohol. He stumbled over to where Naruto was standing and gave him a once-over. This kid ain't even good enough to be my armrest, he added. Naruto's jaw clenched and he grabbed a metal bar that was hanging from the man's belt. Most likely his weapon from the journey here. Without any difficulty or strain, he bent it into a circle, looped it back on the man's belt, and crossed his arms over his chest. The drunk's jaw dropped and he almost dropped his half-empty bottle. Kakashi couldn't help smiling when he saw the man's face, how he loved his genin team. The man licked his lips and backed up to steps, heading away from the blonde. They'll do. Meet me at the gate in 1 hour, the man said, retreating down the hall. Sakura giggled openly once the client was out of hearing range and even Sasuke smirked. The Sandaime was smiling. It was certainly his favorite part of the day so far. All right then, you heard him. 1 hour, and don't be late, Kakashi instructed. The three nodded and walked out the door, on their way to pack up for the mission. Kakashi sighed. Interesting boy you've got there, the Hokage commented. The Junin smiled. Definitely one to keep a close watch on. Konoha's gates. The team walked out of Konoha's limits, the gates looming highly behind them. Their client, Tazuna, hadn't drunk anything before they left and his earlier tipsiness had vanished. He was back to what they assumed was his normal self, cheerful and kind. He still had the ring of metal on his belt and every so often would glance at the blonde uncertainly, as if he expected him to bend a tree like that too. 30 minutes after being on the road, they were traveling on a simple dirt path, carved out of the forest from years of travelers and traders. Kakashi and Tazuna were talking about random things, including the release date on some book called Ika Ika Paradise. Sasuke was playing with a shuriken, spinning it on his finger and throwing it into the air, trying to catch it without chopping off one of his fingers in the process. Sakura was taking in the pure scenery, her expression filled with awe and wonder, as if she had never been outside the village before, which might have been true. And last but not least, Naruto was just looking around nonchalantly, taking in everything at once. He was trying to pinpoint and identify certain sounds in the trees. It was an exercise Itachi had taught him on their travels so he could train while they walked. Now he was doing it for kicks, seeing how many different things he could find. It was during this that he saw a small puddle near his side of the road. His eyes darted around the rest of the area, observing the grass, trees, and sky. The grass was green yet slightly crunchy, meaning it hadn't been wet in a long time. Every step he took kicked up dust, meaning the ground was bone dry. Meaning there hadn't been rain for weeks. So that wasn't any ordinary puddle. Naruto shot a glance at Kakashi and one look told the blonde that he knew too. The teen swiftly walked ahead and stopped at the edge, waiting, as if he had seen something and was now waiting for the rest of the group to catch up. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a hand reach out of the puddle, a kunai outstretched and aimed at his leg. In on-fluid-like motion, he caught the kunai in his foot and stuck it in tight. He winced slightly when he felt the blade break skin and he shuddered when it hit bone, but he didn't stop. He kicked upward, sending the hand's owner out of the puddle and across the path, landing in a heap on the other side. Instantly, his partner jumped up and the puddle vanished. By now, the rest of the team had run up and were ready, Tazuna safely behind Kakashi. Naruto knelt down and harshly ripped the knife out of his foot without a sound. Blood glistened from the tip to almost halfway to the handle, and the gaping hole in the blonde's foot was releasing a steady stream of the crimson liquid. The teen ignored the sting and threw the kunai away, hearing it clatter in the bushes. Sakura looked at him worriedly, but he didn't show any pain or discomfort, only concentration. The two metal-clad ninja were on their feet now, and with a whip of their arms, sent 4 long chains hurtling at them. Kakashi jumped in front and took it, the chains wrapping tightly around his body. But before he could make a move or even say a word, they constricted and sliced the Junin to bits. All 4 of the people's eyes widened as they watched the 26-year-old man killed right in front of them. Sasuke and Naruto glanced at each other and with a brisk nod, the raven-haired boy dashed for the first one, kunai drawn. Naruto turned back to Sakura, who was still staring horror-stricken at the place where Kakashi once stood only second ago. Sakura. Protect Tazuna, he muttered. The girl nodded and Naruto rushed into the fight, heading for the second one. With a quick look, he could see that Sasuke was holding up pretty well on his end, which was good news for him. Now he only had to worry about his opponent. He jumped into the air, dodging a punch the man had thrown at him. It connected with the ground and the earth split, a crater forming around where the ninja's hand had hit. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Note to self, look out for inhuman strength. He flipped from his aerial assault into a bone-breaking roundhouse kick. It made contact with the man's face, who was surprised that a 12-year-old would make a full front attack. The blow sent him stumbling backwards, his arms flailing to keep balance. Naruto didn't pause for him to regain his stature. He landed and stayed close to the ground, coming up and pushing off, hitting the enemy ninja right under the jaw. His head snapped back, a little trickle of blood coming from the corner of his mouth. The blonde kept up with his flight and tucked in, neatly flipping over the man's body. He landed behind him, got a good grasp on the straps of leather holding his metal armor together, and with chakra-enhanced strength, threw him toward the other shinobi. Hit the deck Sasuke, Naruto shouted. The Uchiha hit the ground just as the Rouge collided with his buddy, sending them both into the tree line behind them. Naruto jogged up to where Sasuke was picking himself off the earth. They both threw out a stance and waited, standing in between Tazuna and where they had landed. After a few seconds, one of them burst out of the trees, his metal-encased fist outstretched. Sasuke charged to meet him but Naruto stopped short. There were 2 of them. Where did the other one go? Reality hit him, and his eyes widened. He whirled around in time to see the second on come out of the trees a few yards down from where the first one had emerged, though this one's target was different. He was headed straight towards Sakura and Tazuna. The pink-haired girl raised a kunai in defense and her emerald eye glowed with ferociousness. She was ready to fight, but Naruto knew better. He had just been fighting this guy and he knew that with the speed he was getting plus the factors of his freakish strength and heavy metal armor, it would make a deathly hit if you took it full on. And she didn't look like she was going to move. Naruto didn't even think, he just moved. He poured a hell of a lot of speed into his feet at that